From the Blue Ridge Mountains of Appalachia to the sandhills and dunes of the Outer Banks, the picturesque landscape of North Carolina and quaint small towns have bustled with tourists and inspired the North Carolina film industry. In fact, quite a few well-known horror and thriller films were produced in North Carolina. Some of these films tell the story about how those who seek an enchanting stroll in nature can be thrown into a vortex of danger, madness, and terror.
I think North Carolina is an ideal setting for horror and thriller movies because of the mix of both our geography and the cultural elements.
Of course, there are plentiful small towns as well, but I think just that diversity of nature is what makes it an ideal setting and filming.
These films that tell the story of a trip to nature gone wrong have a lot to reveal about North Carolina history, folklore, and the local film industry.
My name is Taylor Sykes. My expertise in horror is mostly as a writer and enthusiast of horror. I have an MFA in fiction. I also teach horror here at UNC Asheville.
My name's Don Diefenbach. I'm a professor of mass communication at the University of North Carolina at Asheville. I teach video production and various courses in film studies. The trope of a trip into nature going wrong works really well in film because it's simple. For both the filmmakers and the audience. It's not layered with a lot of complicated elements. It taps into these primal fears that are hardwired into us biologically. We evolved being aware that the darkness could hold things that were threatening to us.
I think speaks to our fear of the American dream being dismantled a little bit. And I think that particularly when these stories are set either in small towns or even in rural spaces, I think that's also referencing the American dream as well.
We might not be willing to go camping in the woods with 5 of our friends, but we are willing to watch a movie about it.
Sam Raimi's 1987 horror comedy Evil Dead 2 perfectly exemplifies the trope of a trip to nature gone wrong. It was filmed in Wadesboro, North Carolina.
So the magical or possessed, the object that takes the characters on a wild supernatural ride, the first thing that I think of is the Pandora's box. It is a gateway that once you open it, you can't hold it back after that, so the characters just have to deal with it.
Many directors, such as the Coen brothers, have emulated Sam Raimi's camera work, in which a rapid dolly zoom makes the camera appear to be alive. The technique is commonly referred to as the Raimi cam, or shaky cam.
The use of camera in expressing nature as an oppressive force can be really powerful. I think the most dynamic way this can be used is to put the audience in the subjective point of view of the character who's facing a threat. Then we experience what they experience. We see what they see. We have to run from what they are running from. And that's asking a lot of the audience and getting their blood pressure up.
Another influential North Carolina film put the camera in the middle of a river to tell its infamous story of a trip to nature gone wrong. Deliverance was filmed mostly on the Georgia portion of the Chattooga River, which starts in Cashiers, North Carolina. The film features sequences of Sylva, a small North Carolina town in the Appalachian Mountains, which was also a filming location for 3 Billboards Outside's Ebbing, Missouri, and The Fugitive. Deliverance left an indelible mark on the public perception of the region, both about the natural environment and about the people.
Deliverance is a very memorable film. It's a very effective film. I haven't seen it in 30 years, but I still remember it vividly. It's effective, but it's also problematic. It is playing into stereotypes. It is playing into fears and assumptions. While it did some really powerful things in storytelling, I think we can look at it historically with a more critical eye as well.
The cast got to experience eco-horror in real life, with many close calls and injuries during production. Boorman had the cast do their own canoeing in the film. In an interview, Burt Reynolds reported that Boorman told him a grim motivation for filming the movie in sequence. If a cast member died during production, he could write it into the script. Jon Voight almost fell off the cliff he climbed in the movie. Ned Beatty and Ronnie Cox almost died in the river. Burt Reynolds broke his tailbone on a rock. The movie also drew tourists to the local Whitewater Rapids, resulting in numerous canoeing deaths. Along with being in the eco-horror genre, Deliverance is a defining example of hicksploitation. This subgenre hinges on stereotyping a group of people in American culture known as hillbillies.
Hicksploitation is a subgenre of horror. And in a sense, all horror films are exploitation films. It just comes down to what these films are exploiting. At the end of the day, they're exploiting our fears and our anxieties. But sometimes through characterization and story, they're exploiting other elements as well, and that can be problematic. Deliverance was a profoundly exploitative film that got into our stereotypes, our expectations, our assumptions about people, and not just in Appalachia, but about the South more broadly.
A true aspect of Appalachian culture present in the film is bluegrass music, which has a rich and celebrated history in the region. And the song Dueling Banjos in the film may be the most widely recognizable bluegrass tune. It was originally written and recorded as Feuding Banjos in 1995 by Charlotte-based musician Arthur Guitar Boogie Smith. The film did not credit Arthur Smith, but rather the arranger. Smith sued Warner Brothers for royalties after the song went to number 2 on the Billboard charts. When he won the suit, he decided he did not want his name to appear in the credits because he didn't want to be associated with the film.
The banjo scene in Deliverance had and has huge cultural impact. I remember that refrain, and everybody who's seen the film does. It has permeated popular culture as well. You can see it in comedy routines. You see it on bumper stickers, for goodness sakes. There is something about music specifically that gets into our head. It gets deep into our psyche. Music is the most emotive element in film. And so when combined with horror and when combined with a film that's supposed to get into our fears and anxieties and into our subconscious to begin with, music's going to be really powerful.
Named after the Bobby Vinton song Blue Velvet, David Lynch's postmodern film is perhaps the most important film to be produced in North Carolina. Although the movie is set in Lumberton, the small town setting was recreated on the streets of Wilmington during its heyday of movie production in the late 1980s.
When I came to North Carolina in 1995, Wilmington was a real player. It wasn't Los Angeles or even New York, but Wilmington was on the map and really significant. And part of that had to do with the tax incentives. We were a really attractive state for production. And over time, those tax incentives diminished and expired, and other states jumped in. And back then, I wouldn't have talked about Atlanta as being a player. And now, my goodness, Atlanta is really something else. North Carolina can be a major film center again, and Wilmington can be a major film center again. But it's going to take some effort, it's going to take some doing to bring it back.
Blue Velvet continues to be one of the most celebrated films to be produced in North Carolina, partially due to Lynch's cult following. Lynch directed the series Twin Peaks a few years after Blue Velvet. Both of these stories star Kyle MacLachlan, and both take place in small towns, which Lynch showcases as the perfect place to unfold a horrific postmodern tale.
So the small town in horror is probably one of my favorite tropes. You can almost take any genre of horror and apply it to that small town and watch it tear that town apart and tear the people of that town apart.
Lynch was inspired to write aspects of Isabella Rossellini's character Dorothy based on a horrific memory from childhood of a naked woman running down the road. He recreates a bit of this with an excruciating scene of Dorothy naked in the street. Rossellini tells in her autobiography that prior to filming this scene, a group of locals had gathered with their children to watch the production. Although she personally asked them to take their children home, telling them it was going to be an explicit scene, the fans stayed. The next day, Lynch received a notice banning him from continuing to film on the streets of Wilmington.
We enter the director or the writer's mental landscape and seeing the story through their eyes. So with the ear, it's the direct portal into the mind. And so we as humans, we want to understand what could never be fully understood. So when there is that resistance for not being able to access this understanding, there's fear there. It's incredibly human to just be afraid of what is unknown, what's in the dark and the shadows.